Everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Bulletproof Selling. My name is Sean Rhodes, the Chief Sales Sergeant here at Bulletproof Selling and author of the book Bulletproof Selling, a guide for systemizing sales on the battlefield of business. Now, here at Bulletproof Selling, our mantra, our motto, our mission is to remove hope from how people sell. Because if you're in sales and no matter where you are in an organization, you're selling something. You're selling customer service. You're selling the product that you actually produce. Or maybe you're not in a sales role. Maybe you're just down there. You came across this podcast because you like the idea of bulletproof selling and you realize that, hey, in order to do better, we actually have to make sure that we are not relying on hope in how we produce things, how we relate with our customers, how we engage with our customers, how we interface with them. And of course, if you're on the front lines, then you know as well as anyone that hope is not a sales strategy. And so we've been here for a few years now, every single week, sometimes multiple times a week, to help you remove hope from how you sell. And in the course of that time, we've been able to bring on best-selling authors, Hall of Fame speakers, and people that are out there on the front lines with their folks, with their members, with their salespeople, to make sure that these folks have the resources that they need so that they don't have to rely on hope. My commitment to you is that out of every single one of these episodes, we build a sales system with our guests that you can use to remove hope from some area of your sales strategy, no matter the size of your team or the size of your goals. Now, one thing that we don't get to talk about a lot, because obviously being from the military, very tactically focused here at Bulletproof Selling, taking all that we learned in the Marine Corps, Navy SEALs, Green Berets, all of the different people that I was able to personally study on battlefields, and all of the sales teams and all the operations people that I've been able to embed with in organizations around the world. We're very tactics oriented. But one thing that we don't often get to talk about is why people should be working with us, why people should be buying from our companies. What differentiators do we have that would make them want to actually seek us out? And so in a lot of the course of my conversation, I get to run across people that have a lot of interface with organizations. So these are folks that don't just work for a single organization, but they're in contact with many teams. They're in contact with many companies. And in the association world, it's really great to be with these people and to get them on the show, because these are folks that can be the mavens. They're the people that have their eyes on the sky of what's going on out there in the world. And especially as it applies to the things that we're all seeing post-COVID, supply chain issues, human resource issues, finding the right people on our team, and of course, making sure that people understand the unique value that we can provide no matter what product or service that we're selling. So without further ado, I want to welcome on one of these folks that has their ear to the ground across a lot of different organizations. Welcome to the show, Mr. Robb Clawson. Robb, welcome to Bulletproof Selling.
Thank you very much.
Well, pleasure, sir. So you and I have gotten to chat a couple times before, but share your background a little bit with the folks that are listening and watching right now, especially the members from your organization that no doubt are going to see this. Love to know a little bit about your background. Where'd you come from? How'd you end up where you are? And what are the chief challenges that you're seeing the folks that you're here to serve face right now?
Sure. Well, as yourself, started in the military. I was a artillery captain. Still have a little bit of my hearing left from those days.
Yeah.
That was probably now, gosh, about 30 years ago. But since then, I've been in the sales and the marketing venues for a number of industrial companies in the mining industry, the information technology venue, and most recently for the last 6 years in the air movement and control side. So the fans, dampers, louvers, the aspects of the HVAC industry that make the HVAC industry work.
And so a lot of people might hear that and think, well, fans and dampers doesn't sound that sexy, but I'd love for you to educate us, because without these things, most of us wouldn't be able to work inside of buildings. So talk to us a little bit about the importance of what these things do for us as salespeople, as operations people, folks that are out there in business.
Well, like you said, there's various parts of the world that would not be able to be functioning comfortably, at least, without the HVAC industry and the fans, dampers, louvers, the aspects of a building that make it habitable. It's important from a ventilation standpoint as well as a comfort standpoint. Those are probably the two largest ones that I think come most immediately to mind, especially in the warmer climates. The air conditioning side make it palatable and habitable. But then, even in the northern climes during the winter, the opposite is true, that it makes sure that it's comfortable and a place where you can live, work, and prosper.
And then you and I chatted a little bit before this show about kind of the challenges that are hitting your industry right now. And one of them that you had mentioned was the idea of getting people to kind of volunteer why should we be working with you, right? Because I've got a lot of choices in most industries, especially the industry that you're representing, that your member companies are part of. A lot of us do almost the same thing. So it's really important that we do differentiate, because we might have the same delivery timelines, we might have the same supply chain challenges. So if I'm not doing something unique, then why shouldn't someone pick another company? They might be able to get their product a little faster or a couple pennies cheaper. So where do you see the chief challenges that your members are dealing with right now in the area of sales and operations, and making sure that they're serving their customers in the best way?
Yeah, well, the differentiation, like you said, is a key factor that we want to feature, and that's one of the things our association does into helping them to differentiate. One of the key offerings that, as an association, we offer to our members, and then therefore to the industry, is our certification. We
Mhm.
certify the products that that's a key point of differentiation for our member companies and the products that are certified. What the certification designates is we're not saying that product A is better than product B. What we're saying is that product A says they will do X, Y, and Z, and we've certified that it does perform to that level and does X, Y, and Z. Um, so there'll be two different companies that'll sell similar products. If they're both certified, you can take what they say for gospel that it's going to do what it says it's going to do. Company C that does not certify, it's caveat emptor. If they say they're going to do, it's maybe they will, maybe they won't, but it's not something that has been tested and verified by a third-party verification source, which is in this case us, and that's what the certification stands for. That is a key component of what our members take to the market, and it's a key differentiation that they bear and that they push, and it's very helpful for them.
Something that I've seen across a lot of different organizations, and I'll bet it does apply to your industry as well, is the idea of a certification is very valuable. But if I'm reaching out to a company and they've never heard of the certification, they may not see any value in it. So I'd be curious to know, because I'm sure this is a massive push on the association side, which is how do we educate our prospects on the value of this certification, the importance that it has to them, and the detriment that might happen if they buy company C's fan or their product and it shuts down or creates a safety issue. Now you got to evacuate a whole building, or people can't come into work. So, one question we consistently ask all of our guests, Rob, is how hope plays into how folks sell, how they operate. So, I'd like to know, how does hope play in to the certification process that you have? Is it folks really need to take the initiative on educating prospects that may not know the value of the certification, what it really means, what it stands for, and what it helps them achieve? How does hope play into taking this certification process that you have, which a lot of member companies have and a lot of listeners have across a variety of industries? They're like, hey, I have this great certification process. We spend a lot of time and money building it, but my prospects never understand it, or they don't know about it. I have to educate them. So how does hope play into selling certification as a differentiator?
Well, you hope they understand the value of it, and that they understand what it stands for and what it represents. You're right. It is something that falls very much on our shoulders, but also on our members' shoulders, to explain and educate them on what the certification means and why it is an important facet in what they do for their specifications in a project. And then being able to hold the spec. That is primarily, I think, we've done a fairly good job of educating the engineers and the marketplace of what the certification means, and it appears in the specification. So when an engineer is working on a project, he's going to say that we want to make sure that the product is certified by AMCA standard XYZ. Um, then the hope comes into the fact is that, okay, when they actually put it in and build, when the rubber meets the road, are they holding that spec? Are they holding that specification? So we have to make sure that the education doesn't just stop at the person who's going to be signing the specification or creating the project, that it continues downstream, and that the building owner understands that this is going to cost a little bit more up front, but it is going to save money in the long run because it is going to perform longer, it's going to perform better, it's going to perform to that specification that the engineer or architect have requested. So that may be where the hope, I think, comes in, is like, okay, we've done all this work to get to that point. Let's hope that it continues along the route. And that, I'll be honest, that's the hardest part, because then you are hoping that the value of the specification and the work that they put into making sure that the product is going to meet is going to meet the certifications qualifications is appreciated down the line, and that it doesn't come down to the dollars and cents, that they're going to pay the little bit extra because they know in the long run it's going to last longer and work better.
So obviously, our time in the military taught us that the folks that rely on hope are usually the people that don't make it home. So I know in artillery, especially, so many processes are set up because in case any of the listeners don't know what Robb's job was in the military, think a gun that's so big it has to be toted on a tractor trailer. Now, there's a lot of opportunity for something to go wrong when you're firing a gun that big. So tons of process to make sure that none of the troops that Robb was overseeing got hurt, to make sure that rounds were fired on target, that they didn't hit civilians. I mean, all kinds of things go into just that job. So let's take that type of mentality, Robb. Let's build a sales system that can not only help your members, but any of the listeners out there that have a certification, that have a warranty or a guarantee that they stand behind, that they've invested time in developing, to make sure that they're not hoping that their prospects understand the value. Because I want my prospects, and I'm sure your members want their prospects as well, to show up saying, I've been so well educated on the value of this certification. How could I buy from a company that doesn't have it? So when we talk about trimming hope away from a sales strategy, same thing in the military, or we got to use acronyms because that's all we do in the military. It's acronym after acronym. So we've taken the idea of building a sales system and put it into the acronym TRIM, because we're trimming hope away from a sales strategy. So the T in TRIM is the trigger. So just like for an artillery mission, I've got to get coordinates first. That might be the trigger to know where this thing's supposed to be firing. And then I've got to run the whole set of processes to make sure that it's aimed in the right direction, that my people are staying safe, they're loading the right type of round in that thing. Same thing here for this sales system. If I'm going to trigger a sales system that helps remove hope from the certification sales process, where do I need to begin? Is it when I'm developing the certification? Is it when I'm identifying the folks that I'm reaching out to that might get the value of the certification if they understood it? Where should I really trigger a sales system that has the certification back behind it?
It's along the entire path. I mean, to go back to the artillery analogy, is making sure that the person downrange is calling for the right type of round to fulfill the mission objective. Guys, so it's funny how quickly you can fall, but right back into that speak. But in this case, I mean, it comes from when you're developing the standard to make sure, and that works with members of the association, members of the industry that get together and say, what do we want a product to perform? To what level? What do we want it to achieve? So they develop the standard so that we can test that will take place. So that's the start. And then, as we were alluding to earlier, that it's making sure that downrange understands what that means, and that why it has been set up, and that they know to look for it and ask for it. So, I mean, that's, I think, the best answer for fulfilling the T that you were looking for in the training.
That's amazing. So I love this idea of being mission focused, not necessarily on our mission, but on the mission of the folks we're there to serve, right? Our customers. To ask the question, what do these things, or what do these people need these things to perform at? What is the excellence level of the products or services that we're selling? And what does that deliver to them, right? Does it keep their business more profitable? Does it allow them to continue to operate at all? What's a win look like for our customers? Because once we understand that, then we can build that into our certification process. I'm sure some of the silliest certifications that you've seen, Robb, I know I've seen them, where this thing can hold 1,000 pounds of weight on it. I'm never going to put anything heavier than a feather on it. Why would I care that it can hold 1,000 pounds of weight? So these people obviously weren't looking at the end in mind first. So I love the idea of starting then with, what do our customers need this thing to perform at and to achieve at a level of excellence that might be a step beyond what anyone else can provide? Because if we can hold ourselves to that standard, then we're building a certification that our prospects are going to care about. So that's the T in TRIM. The R in TRIM is making this thing repeatable. So just like when I'm on the front lines with a platoon and they call for an ARTI mission, it's a process they follow that's repeatable. They've been trained in how to call in ARTI. You guys have been trained in how to do everything you do with that big gun, that howitzer, whatever weapon you're using. So what is the couple of steps, right? We're just going to keep this simple, right? 4 or 5 steps. And obviously there could be a lot of sub-steps underneath them. But if I've got 4 or 5 steps that I'm using as a salesperson, as an operations manager, to take this certification and roll it out, what are the 4 or 5 things that I want to begin doing either on my own or in front of my customers to make sure they understand the value of this certification so that I can send it out to all my salespeople and say, here's the checklist you need to follow?
Well, part of it is the standardization of the verbiage that they're going to put into that specification, so that they know that they're consistently asking for the correct thing. That they're not just asking for a certification that may be totally extraneous to what they're looking for to accomplish. That they know that this is the verbiage that we're going to do, and we work with some other outside resources as well as our members to say this is the verbiage that they want to put into the specification, and that they're asking for the right certification and the right to the right standard. And then, like I said, hoping or fulfilling that they do indeed not only put that verbiage in there, which a lot of them do, but that then they hold it, they understand what that specification means, and then they hold it to that specification. So that and I guess to continue the artillery analogy, that if they're asking for the time on target, that they understand how to call for it, when to call for it, and to make sure that it is going to hit where it needs to hit, when it needs to hit.
So if I'm trying to remove hope from this process, then, which obviously is the idea of a sales system, then where every new system we put in place removes hope. If I'm helping my salespeople and my operations folks understand the value of everything that went into this certification, one idea might be, hey, let's line up everything that the certification stands for and a phrase or a term that our prospects are going to understand and connect with. So just, I'll give you a random example. It's probably slightly incorrect, but let's say that our fans are built to withstand a certain amount of temperature and humidity, right? Which is going to be really valuable in certain parts of the world. If I just show up and say, hey, this fan can, withstand 100% humidity and 120-degree temperature, my prospect may say, well, that's great. I bet you a lot of other fans can do that too. That's one way to describe that, but not a way that connects with my prospect. The way to connect that with my prospect might sound something like, if you're operating anywhere in these latitudes, you probably have the challenge of humidity shutting down your equipment. A lot of equipment gets shut down because of humidity or because of moisture getting inside. These fans are not going to have that problem, which means you'll be able to operate during the summer months when normally you might have to shut down your equipment. So just, random example I'm pulling out of the air, but I'm curious what that would sound like if I was going to connect. Just give me one example, Rob, because I'm sure we could walk through a lot of them. But just give me one example of one spec in your certification and how that would benefit a customer, so that your members understand a little bit about how that works.
Again, it goes back to the what the standard is that they're certifying to. And humidity is not one of the areas that
right. Yeah, I thought that wouldn't be off. Yeah.
Okay. But similar to that would be one that we've developed, one of our regions developed in particular, and that was for sand, and that was in the Middle East, an area that I'm sure we both can relate to.
Oh yeah.
And the devastating effects that sand can have in an HVAC ventilation system. So they developed a standard and a certification for louvers to make sure that it would keep out the most of the sand from the system, and the degree of the specification or the certification is that it will perform to that level, and it will maintain the sand evacuation that it is promised. That is the selling perspective they do there is, like I said, if it says it's going to keep out this amount of sand, because it has that certification, you can rest assured that it is going to keep out that degree of sand. We test it vigorously. We retest it every few years to make sure that it is still, the designs have not changed, or that it's still going to maintain that degree of success and efficacy that it's stated it's going to serve. So, I mean, it's the key facet of that certification, again, is that it's going to perform like it says it's going to perform, and that is the key variant that is going to cover for the buyer or the prospect.
So from a customer perspective, then, if you call me up, because let's say I've got operations in the Middle East, Dubai or wherever that might be, and you say in your industry you've got about a 20% downtime due to sandstorms because you've got to clear your gear out, your equipment, you've got to get it back online. Our products, which are certified to this standard, have the capability to withstand the sand that normally shuts down operations for 20% of the year. So if you could regain 20% of your downtime, what would that mean for your business? And of course, maybe it's 20% more profit, 20% more product out the door. So as a customer, then now I've got a very clear link between the value of your certification and how it benefits my business. Because again, most operations people that have some sense would understand the value of not having their equipment shut down due to sand. But if we can clear the space to build the bridge for folks, of course, it gets a lot easier. And you know this as well as I do. If you want an enlisted person to do something, you've got to make it very, very clear, right? No fancy talk. It's got to be straight line from here's what I want you to do and here's how it needs to be done. A lot of operations folks on the front line that may not understand the value of a certification definitely get, if I can be 20% more effective, what that produces for me in all of the things that we're trying to achieve in our business. So I love the idea of a repeatable system then that links every aspect of our warranty, our guarantee, our certification to how it impacts the customer. Because if we can't clearly explain it to them, why should they care about our certification? So we've got the trigger element, making it repeatable. Now the iron trim is making this thing improvable. So if we look back, Rob, to the way that we were using artillery in the Revolutionary War, a lot of improvements have been made between 1776 and 2023, both in the technology that we're using, how we're keeping each other safe while we're using it, the effectiveness and efficacy of those targets. So I'd like to make sure this system is improvable because like you said, every couple of years, you want to test all of the equipment that's been certified, make sure that it's still holding up to the certification standards. So not necessarily updating the certification, but I want to update this sales system. What should I be doing as a salesperson, as an operational person, even as a human resource manager, anyone that touches this certification or the products that it produces? How often should I be taking a look at how do I better format, describe, and language the value of this certification to my customers? Is it engaging in some conversations with current customers to see the value of the certification and what it's provided to them in their businesses? Give me some ideas about how to make this thing improvable, make it better.
Well, you did touch upon it. The standard itself is reviewed usually every 7 to 10 years. That they will, and if something revolutionary comes up within the industry that can do it more quickly, the members and will raise their hand and say, "Hey, we need to look at this, or we need to revise it." Sometimes they need to totally rewrite it. So that keeps the improvement to make sure that it is staying along the technological advances that may be, or the societal and use cases that may need it to change. But from the other perspective is just staying abreast of what is going on within the industry and within the uses of that standard. And that's something that one of the key facets we do as an association, both for our members as well and their sales forces, as well as for the industry as itself, is education is a key facet of our engagement team, that we are always trying to keep them abreast, be it through webinars, through live technical conferences, as well as speaking at other association and other events to make sure that the gospel message is being spread, and that's part of the improvement as well. Except as things change, we make sure that they understand that they're changing, and if it's a key facet that's changing, and we need to spread the word very quickly, very aggressively, we do so. And again, try to make sure that as many people have the opportunity to hear it, and hopefully take the message to heart and continue to improve their processes so that it is a message received.
And a great way I've seen this done as well, Rob, is to not ask the question, what should be keeping our customers up at night that maybe our certification solves? But to your point about industry changes, what are the updates that are being made that this certification needs to be perhaps updated or reformatted around? So instead of asking what should be keeping them, or what is keeping you up at night, it should be what should be keeping you up at night, right? Did you know that the industry standard for our products has been raised a notch this year because of these technological improvements? And if you're not keeping up with that, then you might be falling behind the power curve. So our certification is keeping right in line with that. It's in lockstep with the latest technological advances in our industry. And that helps me know as a prospect that, hey, this certification is actually keeping up with the latest and greatest that's out there, not what worked 10 years ago, and they just never bothered to update their warranty, their guarantee, or their certifications. So we've got the trigger element, making it repeatable, steps that can be followed by every salesperson, that can be really gathered in from customer conversations, from what we're seeing in our member companies if we're dealing with a whole lot of industries across the certification. We got making it improvable. But now the M in trim is something that we really put a lot of emphasis on in the military, which is making sure this thing is measurable. So if I'm taking the time to gather my people together, to build a certification, to roll it out, to develop languaging that I can communicate to my prospects with in terms that they understand, it's going to take some time. It's time that I might be spending making phone calls or selling more stuff, or down there on the shop floor producing more product. So I've got to justify it. What should I measure to make sure that the certifications that I'm rolling out are worth continuing? They're worth investing time in, that they're producing results. Am I just looking at sales? Am I looking at return customers? Am I looking at referrals? What do you think I should be measuring to make sure that the certifications I'm using are worth continuing?
I think sales is obviously going to be a key facet of that, to make sure that they are getting the return that as you mentioned. But another thing that you can measure is just that, we do measure as an association, are the acceptance levels of those specifications, that they are indeed being requested, that the specification is still valid, and that it's important to the project owners and to the engineers that are asking for it. And then kind of going back somewhat into the improvement stage that you said, a lot of times that will lead kind of backwards, and Corona and energy have been two of the two various areas that we've looked at in improving some of the specifications that we did. Energy in perspective, or the energy efficiency, has been one of the key aspects of this, and it's actually generated some new specifications and new certifications that we've been working with energy delivery agencies, as well as state and governmental regulatory agencies, to make sure that the energy efficiency is first and foremost on the manufacturer's mind, and then ultimately on the project owners and the engineer's mind as well. So that is, again, something that comes out of that measurement aspect, that we know that they are indeed being used, they're requested, and that they are keeping up with the times that are out there in the industry.
So we've got an end-to-end sales system now for anybody that's offering a certification, a warranty, a product, service, package, anything that you do that lets your prospects know you stand behind what it is that you're selling. This is a system you can use to not only sell it, but make sure that it stays up with the times, stays up with technological advances. It continues to improve, which I know is something that your organization, AMC, is really, really focused on right now. So, Rob, I want to give you an opportunity. How do people find out more about your organization? Obviously, you're going to have a lot of member companies checking out this podcast, this live stream. But for folks that are out there, maybe on the outer rim, right, that maybe haven't been involved, but they want to get involved, how do we find out more about you and the association that you serve?
It's easy enough. The website, amca.org, amca.org. We have I think, a pretty thorough website that talks about our education as well as our specification and certification, and then our advocacy efforts as well, which are one of our key pillars. The key pillars of the organization are advocacy, certification, and engagement, and that's all very available on the website, as well as our publications and standards. Like I said, we're a standards development organization as well. So all of those standards that we have that cover everything from what products and how they're tested to what that certification stands for are all available at amca.org.
Awesome. Well, Rob, I know you're doing a great job of serving AMCA, and I know you've got an event coming up that we're all looking forward to. So, definitely travel well to that. And for all of the Bulletproof Selling listeners and viewers out there, if you're catching this on the live stream, make sure you're subscribing to that YouTube channel. Just hit that subscribe button. And if you're catching us on podcasts, so maybe you're listening on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere that podcasts can be found, make sure you are subscribing and leaving us a review. That's how other salespeople can learn that hope doesn't have to be part of their sales strategy anymore. So from one veteran to another, Rob, thanks so much for serving the community of folks out there, not only your members, but the sales community at large. Let's get out there and make selling bulletproof.